Hi, I'm Galina Bilaeva, and today I'm interviewing Sramana Mitra. Sramana has been an entrepreneur and a strategy consultant in Silicon Valley since 1994. And Sramana created 1 million by 1 million. It's a virtual incubator, and their goal is to help 1 million entrepreneurs to reach $1 million in annual revenue. Hi, Sramana, and welcome. It's such an honor to have you on my show.
Thank you, Galina. Very nice to be here.
So, Sramana, you are originally from India, right?
Yes.
I interview immigrant women, and I would love to talk about your inspiring experience of making it happen in another country, in the US.
Well, I've now been in the US for many, many, many years. I came here in 1989. I grew up in Calcutta, India, and then I came to the US for college. So I was a student at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts for my undergraduate. And then I went on to do my graduate work in electrical engineering and computer science at MIT. And I started my first company while I was still at MIT. So I went down the entrepreneurship path very early and stayed with that path pretty much my entire career. I did consulting in the middle, but that still was my own firm. So I've never really worked for anybody else.
Yeah. So, and what did the company do? The first
The
company
first one,
that you started, yeah.
the first one was really an outsourcing company, what today would be called an outsourcing company. I didn't have any brilliant idea, but I just wanted to be an entrepreneur and learn about entrepreneurship. I was a computer science background person, so I didn't really have much knowledge about how to start companies and all of that stuff. But I did start one, and that's how I figured out what are the nuances of how a company is started and built, and how do you get customers, how do you sell, and so on and so forth. But then I did very soon after, I did go on to found another company, which was a product company that was venture funded and everything. I raised the venture capital and so on and so forth. And then I moved to Silicon Valley in 1997 with that company.
Awesome. And was it hard for you to raise funds in the beginning? Did you have any
Very
good?
hard. No matter what people tell you, raising money is always hard. And especially when you don't really know what you're doing, when you're doing it for the first time, it's very hard. Um, and I would say it's still hard for people, even after doing it multiple times, because of a variety of different reasons. Things change, sectors go out of favor. Maybe there's too much competition in the sector that you're working on. There's all sorts of reasons why investors say no to you, and once in a while they say yes. So it's that once in a while yes that you work very hard for, and push and push and push, and you probably talk to 50, 60 investors before one says yes.
Wow. Well, I just read a very interesting quote yesterday. It said, 9 out of 10 businesses fail, so start 10 companies.
It's not easy for businesses, right?
Yeah, yeah. So,
Okay.
and how did you feel yeah, by the way, um, did you have any mental blocks about raising money? Was it more of a psychological barrier that you had in the beginning?
I have very little mental barriers. So whatever makes sense, I can do, or I can bring myself to do. So no, I had no reservations. I didn't know anything about raising money the first time, but I learned it, and I figured it out, and it was exciting and stressful and interesting and everything, and I learned a lot. And I built a great network through that process. And then I raised multiple times financing. Um, but this time, for example, this is my fourth company. I have not raised money. I have the network. I have had offers and so forth, but I chose this time. I have so far chosen to do the business without financing, without outside financing.
Just with clients, right?
Just clients, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a profitable company, and I have self-financed the company so far, and it's working. So That's not a bad situation.
Yeah, I would love to talk about 1 million by 1 million a little bit later. I have another question. So, when you moved to the US, what was your first impression of the country?
When I was 18, everything seemed so, new and so full of possibilities, right? I grew up in Calcutta, which I don't know if you know anything about this place. It's a very large city and very intense, very crowded, very polluted, and blah blah blah. And I ended up in this beautiful, picturesque little town called Northampton, Massachusetts, in western Massachusetts, right below Vermont, actually. And just aesthetically, it was a very different experience. Culturally, it was a very different experience. Weather, climate-wise, it was a very different experience. Western Massachusetts gets very, very cold, and it has a very, very long winter. And I grew up in a tropical, tropical Indian place. So everything was different, and yet everything was new, everything was interesting, and it was a very international student community and faculty. So the dorm I lived in, probably it was a small New England house, and we had probably 20 nationalities just in the house itself. So just getting to know so many people from so many different places and different cultures. The typical American first generation immigrant experience, which in a way almost is very hard to replicate anywhere else.
Hmm. So, do you feel better in an international community now?
I do. Now I very much do. I mean, absolutely, without question, I feel better in the international community.
So, in Silicon Valley is an international community, right?
Extremely so. Extremely so.
Yeah, I heard. I can't remember the numbers, but um, somebody told me that the majority of businesses in Silicon Valley are started by immigrant entrepreneurs.
Yes, it's a very large number.
Are there a lot of women among them?
No.
No. Oh. Well, we will gonna change that.
No, there in the Silicon Valley community, it is not. It's very much still a male-dominated community, and it's not a. It's definitely does not have huge numbers of women working in technology. Period, and then technology entrepreneurship is a whole other ball game. So, and all that kind of stems from the fact that there aren't enough women in computer science or women in technology. I would say in the last decade, the numbers have improved a lot. Um, so you will hopefully see more as these women mature and start to take leadership roles and start their own companies. But the generation I come from, the numbers were still not so great, and the
Sramana,
generation before me was even worse.
yeah. Sramana, so as a tech entrepreneur, do you feel like you do business in a different way as a woman?
Uh, I don't think so. Actually, my motto on this is that if you are trying to be a good entrepreneur, be a damn compelling entrepreneur, not just a damn compelling woman entrepreneur. The rules of the game are not particularly different. You still need customers, you still need, you know, channels, you need to sell, you need to market, you need to build products. There's nothing that women do differently. Maybe there's a little bit of difference in the management styles, but that also varies widely.
Yeah. So, what are the advantages of being an immigrant woman in the US?
What are the advantages? Well, for me, I think perhaps the one advantage is that I'm more memorable just because when, when people meet me as opposed to another white guy or another, you know, guy, because I am, statistically in the minority, I'm probably more memorable.
That's a great point. I mean, living in China, it's incredible that I met quite a few entrepreneurs here. I think I realized later just because I'm in China and they find time to meet me, you know,
Yeah.
because they come from somewhere else and it's like, wow, like China, Hong Kong, interesting. Yeah. So, Saramana, you also wrote a book, Vision India 2020. And you called it a business fiction book, right? So what inspired you to work on it, and what is this book about?
So, if you look at my body of work in terms of writing, I've actually written a lot of books at this point. My seventh book is coming out. Seventh business book is coming out soon. Actually, it just went live on Amazon, even though we haven't announced it yet. It's called Feminine Feminism.
Oh,
But but the to answer your question, I really believe in storytelling. The best way to both inspire and educate people is through stories. So if you look at my body of work, I've written through these in entrepreneur journey stories of capturing how people have navigated their way through the entrepreneurial landscape, ups and downs, the valleys and the peaks, and how they have traversed their way and how they have met the challenges that have crossed their paths and so forth. That's the kind of storytelling that I have really emphasized on in my writing. And Vision India 2020 is the only one of all my books that is actually written in form of fiction. All the rest are actual stories of how entrepreneurs have built companies. Vision India 2020 is stories that I made up. They're still stories, but they're made up. So that's why I call it business fiction. And what it is 45 really powerful billion-dollar business ideas that can be built. And it's kind of uses the Indian context to develop these ideas. And it between 2008 and 2020 shows how these companies can be built to very large scalable businesses. And my idea was to help this or help entrepreneurs use this as an idea generation and idea development tool. So the main target audience for this book are entrepreneurs who are working with India in some way, whether it's using the Indian market, whether it's India as a back end, whatever it is, leveraging India. But if you then look at the ideas, many of them apply to development economics in general. So it would apply to Africa, it would apply to Latin America, East Asia, so on and so forth, China even.
yeah.
And essentially this is a development economics book.
Yeah, well, I noticed that when you just start to believe this story, I mean, you can even make it happen. So I think it's brilliant that
Yeah,
you.
visioning, the technique actually has a name. It's called visioning. Visioning is a very, very powerful technique. Steve Jobs' reality distortion field exactly is visioning.
I remember in one of your interviews, you mentioned the importance of having a mentor, and so could you please give your perspective on who a mentor is, and how do you find a mentor and work with this person?
So, a good mentor is somebody who's going to help you get to the next level and take advantage of your potential. So, it's somebody who understands the domain in which you want to work in and can kind of, both through their network as well as knowledge, can steer you in furthering your journey within that domain. And so, how do you find a good mentor? You find a good mentor generally in your network, people whom you encounter through your regular professional work. Now, in the entrepreneurship domain, 1 million by 1 million is doing something very innovative and very unique, which is we are offering a very large scale mentoring service through the 1M1M incubation program.
How do you work with a mentor? So, do you set up a meeting and then you go through some problems and ask for advice? That's what I heard.
So in 1M1M, that's not what we do. In 1M1M, we have so we do online mentoring sessions, but these are group mentoring sessions. And you can join any of them, by the way. We have them every Thursday morning. Tomorrow morning, there's one at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And you can just dial into this call. People from all over the world dial into these calls. Like, I believe in the registration We have one from Colombia tomorrow, one from uh, London, I think, and one from India. So it's a very, very international group. And every week we do, this is a free program, by the way, we run it like a reality show. So any people, we have 3 to 7 entrepreneurs in an interactive mode, and I coach them, I anchor the show, and the rest of the room listens. So you can listen and learn from what is being discussed. And then in the premium program, we use a combination of a curriculum, which is delivered in form of video lectures and case studies, and an interactive version of the same kind of WebEx mentoring sessions. So you get to learn both from the video lectures that we offer you and the case studies, and in conjunction with these kind of live mentoring sessions. Plus, we have email and web Q&A and all of that stuff.
What do you think about MBA programs? I mean, it kind of became popular to do a program during the crisis, during the financial crisis, and invest in education. What would you say about that?
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
And you take a big loan, and then you have to pay that loan off, and it has its value. The top MBA programs, the biggest value they offer is the network. Beyond that, if you're not in one of the top MBA programs, I think it's a questionable value, because you don't get the network and you get the debt. And that's where I think it's more ambiguous how much value it offers.
Right.
So the way we have this one, I don't know if you've seen this article. There's an article that one of my team members, Irina Patterson, wrote that MBA versus 1M. Let's do the math. So Harvard Business School is like $85,000 a year, whereas 1M is $1,000 a year. And what are you getting for it? What are you trying to do with it? If you're trying to be an entrepreneur, which one is a better value, and so forth. So it's kind of amusing. And the truth is, if you want to be an entrepreneur, getting saddled with a big debt is really a no-no.
Do you think that people believe in online education now?
More people believe, but there are lots of people who have not got onto it. So I would still say we're really scratching the surface of online education. There's a lot of changes that are going to happen when online education is really fully, deeply woven into the fabric of society. It's going to make immense impact, and we haven't gotten even like 1% there yet.
Wow. So even with companies like and websites like Udemy, Coursera, uh, and others, it's still not even close.
It's very minor. I think the one that is having the maximum impact is Khan Academy. That's doing very well, and but even so, the penetration is going to get a lot higher as as it gets built into. Khan Academy is doing some very interesting experiments, including rolling the program out in schools and changing the model, where instead of the teachers giving lectures, the teachers and then assigning homeworks, the teachers are assigning homeworks to listen to Khan Academy lectures and then coming to class and then doing exercises with the students. So that's a complete reversal of the classroom teaching method.
Yes.
These kinds of experiments, and they're still in very much experimental stage. They're not quite, you know, they're not. They need to go much further. They need to be developed much further. But they have a long way to go. iPad is very big in schools nowadays, and the apps are very big in education, and getting bigger and bigger. We have a portfolio company in 1M called Avaz, AVAZ. It's a top rated app in autism education for children. So you see that you see apps, iPad apps in all different dimensions of education right now. The fact that there are apps is not sufficient. There are apps, and then there needs to be penetration of those apps and utilization of those apps in the classrooms or in children's school homes and so forth for education, for that to be meaningful in education.
And how are they gonna be funded, these apps? Because if it's for education, then probably it's paid by a school or some sort of
Could be
other
paid by
organization.
schools, it could be paid by parents. It's the same model as textbooks and other,
Yes.
educational technology.
Sramana, how did the Silicon Valley change within the last 10 years?
Um, Silicon Valley has become a lot bigger, and the the layer in which we are doing entrepreneurship or technology development right now has evolved to a much higher layer. So we started with doing chips and networking equipment and getting the plumbing of the technology together.
Mm-hmm.
Now the plumbing is actually there. So innovation is happening in the last 10 years. I would say the innovation has happened more in software, more in the social networking world, in cloud computing and delivery models, and so on and so forth, and applications. So that's a different layer of innovation, and that's a different style of innovation. It's less algorithmic innovation, perhaps in some cases, more usability innovation. So it's a progression, and it's going to continue to progress in what. There's an article that one of my articles that was published this morning at Economy, Technologies Next Decade. You may want to take a look at that. Um, Actually, no, not Technologies Next Decade, Innovations Next Decade, I think. It talks about how innovate the remaining or the open problems in innovation today. A lot of them are in human centric technology, how to make technology more useful for human beings, as opposed to technology for technology's sake. So actually solving problems of society, problems of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of work to do there.
So, do you think can women from disadvantaged communities in India also start programming, coding?
They are already. There's this whole rural business process outsourcing phenomenon going on in India, where rural centers are being set up where people are being taught computer skills, and people are starting to apply those computer skills to finding employment.
Sramana, so why people from India have this really good ability to to use computers to code?
Um, there are probably multiple answers to that. One of them is English is a very widely penetrated language in India. And secondly, the Indian education system is very heavily emphasized on mathematics and math and science, but mathematics is where the logic comes from. So to be a good programmer, you kind of need to understand logic and have a good logical mind. And if your education system requires that you develop that from very early on, develop that rigor, mathematical rigor, I think that helps.
Sramana, thank you again for coming over to my show and for sharing your experience with us. And I had so much fun talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye, Galina.
Thank you, Sramana. Bye.
Bye.